On a foggy Halloween night, a billionaire sits alone in his marble mansion. No family, no laughter, just the echo of his own success. Suddenly the doorbell rings. He opens it to find a tiny trick-or-treater dressed as a ghost, whispering, "You forgot me," before vanishing into thin air. Chills race down his spine as he realizes that voice sounded hauntingly familiar. The next morning, a newspaper headline reveals something that makes his heart stop. Who was that ghost child, and why did she come only to him? Stay till the end. The truth will leave you speechless. The city glittered below the towering skyline, a maze of twinkling lights and dark alleys. From his high-rise office, Julian Kane, billionaire CEO and self-made tycoon, watched the streets with practiced detachment. His life was a perfectly curated gallery of wealth, power, and isolation. Every object in his penthouse whispered success: polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, abstract art worth more than most families earned in a decade. Yet despite it all, a hollow emptiness gnawed at him. No laughter echoed in these rooms, no tiny feet padded across the floorboards. Halloween was just another night to him, another night to prove that money could buy everything, except warmth. Julian had been a man of habits. Every October 31st, he hosted a lavish Halloween gala for elites: costumes, champagne fountains, and gold-plated decorations. But this year, the invitations were unclaimed, the rooms empty, the air felt colder, the shadows longer. He wandered through the echoing halls, the weight of silence pressing against his chest. Outside, the streets were alive with children laughing, carrying candy buckets, their ghosts and witches hopping with excitement. Julian had no time for such frivolity. Halloween was merely a backdrop for his wealth, a calendar marker for another tax-deductible charity event. Yet tonight, as he stared down at the lively crowds from his tower, a strange unease tickled the edges of his mind, a whisper that he hadn't felt in decades: guilt. He had once known warmth. Years ago, when he was not a billionaire but a boy of 10, Halloween was magic. He had run through the streets with his little sister, sharing candy, laughing at shadows, and dreaming of ghosts that only seemed real in the flicker of jack-o'-lanterns. But she had died that night, a cruel accident he never quite forgave himself for. The memory haunted him more than any business rival or financial loss. It had hardened him, convinced him that emotion was weakness, that attachment was pain. Wealth became his armor, success, his solace. And yet tonight, that memory resurfaced, unbidden and insistent, as if the city itself were reminding him of what he had lost. Julian's security system chimed. He frowned, impatient. Every night, the staff checked the cameras, scanned the perimeters, and ensured the building was secure. But something about tonight felt different. Perhaps it was the wind whipping down the glass facade, or the shadows that seemed to flicker oddly on the hallway walls. He ignored it, returning to his polished office, where a single pumpkin flickered under a desk lamp. He had bought it for himself, a reminder of tradition, of a childhood now buried under spreadsheets and stock tickers. The first knock came just as he was about to retire for the night. It was faint, hesitant. Julian frowned, irritation rising. Who would dare disturb me? He strode to the massive front door, the echo of his polished shoes loud in the empty foyer. When he opened it, no one was there. Only a small candy bucket rested on the doormat, shaped like a ghost, paper peeling at the corners. A chill raced through his spine. He picked it up carefully, examining it. There was no note, no name, just a faint smell of autumn leaves and candle wax. He placed the bucket on the counter, dismissing it as a prank by neighborhood children, a harmless trick to amuse the rich recluse. Yet, as he returned to his office, the knock came again. Louder this time. Julian's pulse quickened. No one knows this address. No one should be here. Slowly, He descended the grand staircase, each step echoing, the shadows of ornate railings stretching unnaturally along the walls. And then he saw her. A small figure stood on the marble landing, draped in a simple white sheet with cut-out eyes, the classic ghost costume. But there was something unsettling. The eyes beneath the holes glimmered with recognition. Julian froze, the world narrowing down to that small, trembling face. The girl held a crumpled paper in her tiny hands. Her lips moved as if speaking, but no sound came. Only the wind carried her whisper, faint and chilling. "You forgot me." Before he could react, she vanished. The sheet fell to the floor, as if caught in a sudden gust. Julian bent down, picking up the paper. It was a child's handwriting, careful and deliberate. Julian Kane. Remember Halloween? His breath caught. He had not thought of her, or the words, in decades. He felt a lump in his throat he could not swallow. The city outside seemed to grow darker, as if the lights themselves were dimming to reflect the sudden weight of history pressing down on him. Julian spent the rest of the night searching. The security footage revealed only empty hallways, a single flicker of movement in the candlelight, and the pumpkin on his desk rolling slightly, as if nudged by invisible hands. No sound, no explanation, just a creeping dread that he could neither rationalize nor ignore. By morning, he was exhausted, haunted, and restless. He tried to dismiss it, rationalizing it as stress, insomnia, or a figment of his imagination. But the haunting was more than a dream. His staff reported minor disturbances, lights flickering, doors closing on their own, a soft, childlike giggle echoing through the halls. Julian's rational mind fought the evidence, but the unease gnawed at him, unrelenting. Weeks passed. Halloween had ended, but the memory of that tiny, ghostly trick-or-treater remained. Julian returned to his routines, meetings, acquisitions, charity galas, yet he felt watched, judged by invisible eyes. Occasionally late, at night he would find a small token on his desk, a candy wrapper, a leaf, or a paper with childlike handwriting. "I'm still here." For the first time in decades, Julian felt vulnerable. The walls he had built around his heart, the fortress of wealth and detachment, began to crack. He realized that money could shield him from the world, but not from guilt, not from memories, and perhaps not even from the dead. The city had become alive in ways he could no longer control. On quiet nights, the skyscrapers seemed to whisper to him, reminding him of the sister he had lost, the child he had been, and the person he might still save. If he could only confront what had returned to him. Julian knew then that Halloween had become a reckoning. The ghostly child, the crumpled papers, the unexplained touches of the supernatural. They were all a summons, a challenge, a question he could no longer ignore. Could a billionaire surrounded by all the world's wealth face the consequences of what he had neglected? Could he atone? And so the stage was set. Julian Kane, the man who had everything, had no choice but to walk into the unknown, to confront the past, and to meet the little trick-or-treater again. This time, not as a man of wealth, but as a human haunted by memory, guilt, and the hope of redemption. The question lingered like smoke curling through the penthouse. Who was the child, and why had she returned? Stay till the end, because the truth about the ghost trick-or-treater will not just shock Julian, it will change everything he thought. He knew about life, death, and Halloween itself. The days after Halloween passed strangely for Julian Kane. The city outside continued its normal rhythm. Children in costumes, couples laughing under streetlights, the hum of traffic filling the air. Yet inside his penthouse, the world felt suspended. Shadows stretched unnaturally along walls. Flickers of candlelight danced on glass surfaces as if moved by unseen hands, and the faint scent of autumn leaves lingered in the hallways. Julian tried to convince himself it was stress, fatigue, or the ghosts of childhood memories intruding. But rationality faltered the moment he found another paper on his desk, neatly folded and written in the same careful childish script. "I'm waiting." He stared at the note for long minutes, his fingers trembling. He did not recognize fear in years, but now it crawled through his veins. The security system had captured no one entering the building, no signals of intrusion, no sign of any human presence. Yet these signs, notes, objects, fleeting sounds, defied explanation. They demanded attention. They reminded him that the child, whoever she was, had a purpose. Julian could not sleep. He walked the halls of his penthouse, his polished shoes echoing against marble floors. Every corner, every shadow, seemed alive. A breeze moved curtains through the windows were sealed. A faint giggle, too soft to locate, drifted through the rooms. His mind fought itself, rationalizing each incident, but the emotional weight was undeniable. For the first time in decades, he felt small, exposed, accountable. He recalled the night of his sister's death, her laughter, her small hand in his as they ran through the streets, the world alive with wonder. And he remembered the accident that had torn her from him. It had hardened him, taught him that attachment invited pain and that wealth could shield him from vulnerability. But the child at his door, the ghost trick-or-treater, seemed to force him to confront the very memories he had buried. Days later, Julian found himself wandering the streets, uncharacteristically drawn to the neighborhoods he had avoided for years. The laughter of children, the glow of jack-o'-lanterns, the excitement of costumes. It all reminded him of a life he had lost. As he walked past a row of houses, a small shadow darted across the sidewalk. He followed it instinctively, heart racing, only to find an empty street and a single glowing candy wrapper. The wrapper shimmered unnaturally in the streetlight, as if beckoning him forward. At his penthouse that night, the disturbances escalated. Lights flickered in rhythm with his heartbeat. The pumpkin on his desk glowed brighter, though he had not replaced the battery. The air was thick with the scent of candle wax and fallen leaves. And then he heard it, a whisper, unmistakably human, unmistakably familiar. "You must remember." Julian froze. His mind raced, piecing together fragments of memory. The voice, the whisper, the notes, they all connected to a night decades ago. A child, his sister, or someone tied to her memory. He did not know how or why this child had returned, yet a profound sense of urgency settled in his chest. This was no ordinary haunting. It was a reckoning. Over the next week, Julian tried to reach out, to understand the presence that had invaded his life. He left the penthouse only briefly, visiting old neighborhoods, abandoned playgrounds, and the streets where he had once trick-or-treated. Everywhere he went, signs appeared. A carved pumpkin on a stoop, a small paper figure taped to a lamppost, each symbolically hinting at recognition of his past. His staff began to notice changes in him. Julian, once controlled, precise and detached, grew restless. He wandered through offices without purpose, paused mid-meetings, and appeared distracted by noises no one else heard. The whispers persisted, guiding him to objects he could not explain. An old costume from his childhood, a photograph of his sister that had been tucked away, letters he had never sent. Each item seemed intentionally placed, a breadcrumb trail meant to lead him somewhere. One evening, as a storm raged outside, Julian returned to find the penthouse transformed subtly, yet impossibly. Objects had moved. A small chair from the dining room was placed beside the desk. The ghostly pumpkin glowed brighter, casting shadows that seemed almost human. And then she appeared again, the child in the ghost costume hovering in the doorway, eyes wide and shining. She reached out, her small hand empty but full of expectation. Julian's instincts screamed to flee, to call security, to rationalize. But his heart, long dormant, recognized a truth too profound to ignore. He knelt slowly, the marble floor cold beneath him, and extended his hand. The child did not move closer, did not speak, yet her presence filled the room with an almost unbearable tension. He sensed urgency. The child had a purpose, and he was part of it. Over the next days, Julian became obsessed. He studied old files, photographs, and forgotten memories. He revisited hospitals, orphanages, and neighborhoods where tragedy had touched children. Each clue, each piece of evidence, hinted at a life interrupted, a debt unpaid. The child, in her spectral appearances, seemed to lead him toward understanding, toward confronting failures he had long buried under wealth and ambition. Late one night, as rain hammered against the skyscraper windows, Julian followed a faint glow to the rooftop garden. There he found the ghost trick-or-treater standing by a carved pumpkin, light flickering in her eyes. A sudden gust lifted the sheet from her small shoulders, revealing a face he recognized not from memory, but from the fragments of photographs he had buried. It was a girl who had suffered, abandoned, or lost, a symbol of all the innocence he had neglected in his pursuit of power. The air thickened with tension. Julian felt time slow as he reached for the paper she held, finally understanding that it contained not a request for candy, but a plea for recognition, justice, or closure. The wind rustled the edges of documents, a candle flickered as if in agreement, and the city below seemed to hold its breath. He realized that this haunting was not malevolent. It was purposeful, moral, and unyielding. The child demanded reckoning, and he could not escape it. In the following nights, Julian attempted to communicate. He left small gifts, notes of apology, and gestures of understanding. The child responded subtly, a shifted object, a flicker of light, a whispered breath. Each interaction intensified his understanding of the balance between life and death, power and humility, greed and compassion. He realized the Halloween apparition was teaching him, guiding him through the corridors of guilt and memory toward redemption. Julian's transformation did not go unnoticed. Staff, neighbors, and even strangers remarked on changes: generosity, kindness, attention to those who had long been ignored. Julian organized charity events, gave resources to struggling families, and reopened connections he had abandoned. Yet his attention remained fixed on the child, on the spectral presence that had challenged the very core of his being. The haunting grew more intense as he neared comprehension. Shadows lengthened, whispers grew clearer, and symbolic objects appeared in impossible places. Each night, he felt closer to the truth, that this ghostly trick-or-treater was not merely a spirit, but a messenger of justice, memory, and accountability. Julian realized that understanding her purpose was the only way to reclaim the humanity he had lost. Finally, one stormy night, Julian followed a trail of glowing pumpkins to an abandoned church on the edge of the city. The child awaited him there, her ghostly presence luminous against the dark, rain-soaked backdrop. The air was electric, thick with anticipation. Julian understood in a single overwhelming moment that this encounter would reveal everything: the reasons, the regrets, and the path forward. And as he stepped forward, hand trembling, heart pounding, he realized that Halloween had become not a night of candy and frivolity, but a confrontation with the past, a chance to make amends, to heal wounds he had long ignored, and to confront the consequences of neglect, loss, and ambition. The stage was set. Julian Kane, the billionaire, alone and haunted, prepared to face the truth about the ghost trick-or-treater and the secrets she carried that could not be ignored. What will Julian discover about the ghost child? Who is she really, and why did she return to his life on Halloween? The truth will shock, haunt, and change everything. The storm raged outside Julian Kane's penthouse, lightning illuminating the city skyline in jagged bursts. Inside, the vast, silent rooms of his mansion were alive with tension. Shadows stretched unnaturally across marble floors, dancing in rhythm with the flickering candlelight. Every object seemed charged with anticipation, as if the air itself knew that the truth was about to be revealed. Julian stood at the center of the grand hall, the crumpled papers from the ghost child laid carefully before him, trembling hands hovering above them. Each heartbeat thundered in his ears, echoing in the cavernous space, as if counting down to a revelation he had long feared. And then she appeared, the child, ethereal and luminous, standing at the far end of the hall. Her ghostly sheet flowed around her small frame, but her eyes, impossibly clear, glowed with recognition. Julian froze, paralyzed, as memories he had buried for decades surged to the surface. He saw her not just as a spectral trick-or-treater, but as a living symbol of every regret, every act of neglect, every childhood he had abandoned in the pursuit of power. The child stepped forward, her movements deliberate, almost human in their intent. She held out a hand, not for candy, not for attention, but for acknowledgement. Julian realized that this was no ordinary haunting. It was a reckoning. She was the embodiment of everything he had denied himself: innocence, family, love, and responsibility. And she had returned to confront him, to demand that he face the truths he had long evaded. As he reached toward her, the room seemed to twist. Shadows deepened unnaturally, candle flames flickered violently, and the temperature dropped. Julian felt a coldness seeping into his bones, a chill that was not from the storm outside. The child's whisper reached him, soft yet piercing. "Do you remember?" Suddenly, a montage of memories assaulted him. He saw his sister, laughing on Halloween night decades ago, her small hand slipping from his. He saw the accident that took her, the hospital hallway where he had screamed in helplessness. He saw the promise he had made to himself, to never allow attachment to make him vulnerable, and the fortress of wealth and ambition he had constructed to keep pain at bay. Each memory struck with the force of lightning, leaving him gasping, eyes wide with disbelief and sorrow. Funds were allocated to orphanages, hospitals, and educational programs. Employees noticed that compassion had become a core value of his company, a standard he enforced personally. Media outlets reported on Julian Kane's transformation, calling it the Billionaire's awakening, though few knew the supernatural catalyst behind it. Yet Julian did not share the story of the ghost trick-or-treater. Some things, he realized, were meant to be private, sacred, and transformative in ways the public could not understand. The experience had been intimate, a deeply personal reckoning. It was not fame he sought, but growth, a chance to right the wrongs of a life spent chasing wealth over meaning. As years passed, Julian's philanthropic endeavors expanded. He established a foundation dedicated to children who had suffered loss, neglect, or hardship. The Ghost Trick-or-Treater Initiative, as it was quietly called among staff, funded programs for education, housing, and mentorship. Every year, on Halloween, he would leave a small pumpkin on the doorstep of a child in need, a symbolic act of remembrance, hope, and kindness. Julian also reconciled with memories of his sister, honoring her legacy through acts of compassion and charity. The mansion became a sanctuary for family gatherings, for laughter, and for reflection. Shadows and ghosts no longer symbolized fear. They represented memory, lessons, and the enduring power of love. Julian had finally bridged the chasm between wealth and humanity, success and empathy, memory and redemption. The ultimate impact of that fateful Halloween night was undeniable. Julian Kane, once a man consumed by ambition, had been transformed by a spectral child who demanded recognition, accountability, and love. The billionaire learned that no fortune could shield him from conscience, and no power could replace connection. Every child he helped, every life touched, was a continuation of the lesson imparted by the ghost trick-or-treater. And so, as candlelight flickered across the penthouse during the next Halloween, Julian stood by the window, gazing down at the city alive with costumes, laughter, and mischief. He whispered softly, as if the wind could carry his words. "Thank you. I will never forget. I will always honor you." The city moved on, unaware of the ghostly encounter that had changed the life of a billionaire. But Julian Kane carried it forever, etched into his heart, guiding every decision, every act, every moment of compassion. The child had come seeking acknowledgement, and in return, had given him the gift of humanity. The lessons of Halloween were no longer frightening. They were illuminating, a reminder that even the most powerful must remember the power of empathy, the weight of memory, and the enduring importance of kindness. As night fell over the city, pumpkins glowed softly in windows across neighborhoods, each light a silent testament to innocence, courage, and the transformative power of one child's presence. Julian Kane, billionaire, philanthropist, and man transformed, finally understood that wealth without heart was empty, and that redemption was possible, even for those who had long walked in the shadow of regret. And in the quiet, Julian could almost feel her presence once more, a gentle, approving glow at the edge of the room, a whisper of laughter, A promise that he had finally learned to see, to care, and to honor the past while building a future of hope. The ghost trick-or-treater had returned to change one man's life. But her message resonates for all of us. No matter how much we achieve, empathy, love, and remembrance are the true measures of wealth. Watch till the end and ask yourself, what would you do if a ghost came to confront your heart?